Hello, and welcome back to Movie Remake Time, a Filmmaker's Compass podcast where we take a look at sequels, reboots, and remakes and ask the very simple question, who did it best? I'm CP. This is my awesome co-host, D-Man. D-Man, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. We have another kind of quirky episode where we're not doing a full reboot or, sequel per se, but we're really excited because this week in theaters, the latest James Bond movie dropped, and you have to go to the theaters, I believe. I don't know if you can watch it streaming yet, but No Time to Die has dropped in the theaters, and we decided to do something a little fun in honor of its release, and that is compare the final Daniel Craig Bond movie to the final Pierce Brosnan movie. And that's because CP and I grew up watching both of those. We were able to see them as they were released, and those were the Bonds that we actually got to experience in the flesh versus inheriting, through movie history. So we're kind of pumped. This is a different, style of this show, but definitely excited to talk James Bond. I mean, come on.
Oh, dude, I'm so excited. So excited.
One of the things that really stands out, and we have to say this at the top of this episode, and that is spoiler alert.
So many spoilers.
If you have not seen No Time to Die, or you haven't caught up on the Daniel Craig Bond saga, I would recommend you do not listen to this podcast, as we will be talking spoilers. So from here on out, if that's you, I would kindly either turn it off, or if you're just ready to hear the ending, welcome to the show.
Okay.
So let's get right into the James Bond legacy here, which is Pierce Brosnan did 4 James Bond films. I believe it was GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. Exactly. So the movie we will be discussing is Die Another Day specifically, although I'm sure we're going to be referencing Pierce Brosnan's full run of Bond films.
Probably. Die Another Day is 2002. At the time, Pierce Brosnan did not know it was going to be his last Bond film, which is an important piece to remember when we discuss 2021 No Time to Die, because Daniel Craig made it very clear going into this film that this was going to be his final Bond film, no matter what.
Now, I can't quote Daniel Craig here, but I do remember an interview in which he basically kind of exposed some disdain for the role. I think he was maybe just overplaying James Bond. And you don't get that when you watch No Time to Die. I didn't feel that through the performance, although I do know prior to coming back, he had already expressed, that he kind of wanted to be done with it.
Well, I always thought that was kind of something very interesting. Obviously, George Lazenby early on expressed some dissatisfaction with the Bond character in that role. But with the exception of him, all the other Bond actors seem to have really loved it and embraced it. And I think one of the sharp contrasts that we get between Daniel Craig and Pierce Brosnan is Craig, after it seemed like Quantum of Solace, was kind of talking about, all right, I'm done with this, I'm ready to move on. Whereas Pierce Brosnan, when he found out that he was being replaced after Die Another Day, seemed very upset as an actor. I remember kind of feeling bad about the way they went about almost just kind of firing him and moving on, because he seemed to really love James Bond.
Not only did Pierce Brosnan embrace the role and he loved James Bond, but it is worth noting that they decided after Die Another Day to reboot the franchise with a new Bond and a new style. And Die Another Day, up to that point, was the most successful Bond film, I think, internationally that had ever been released. So it was actually a pretty bold move, even though, if you look at contemporary reviews of Die Another Day versus, looking back on it now, I think it's much more poorly received today than it was in its time. It did not really benefit from the length of time. And then it didn't benefit from Daniel Craig stepping into the role and kind of giving us that much more down to earth, grittier, punch you in the face James Bond, not the smooth, suave, ladies' man that Pierce Brosnan was. But before we move on, I did want to acknowledge, so Daniel Craig's run as Bond, and you can verify this for me because I know you know it probably better than I do, but it's Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre, and now No Time to Die. So Daniel Craig actually did one more movie. He did 5 and Brosnan did 4. And like you said, Daniel Craig actually got kind of the send-off in No Time to Die with his, you know, pretty much everyone was like, this is going to be his last take on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to start with, let's look at the James Bonds. I mean, did you have a preference here? Yeah. Like, is it Pierce Brosnan or Daniel Craig? Because I have to say, I think out of all the movies that we just listed, my favorite is probably GoldenEye.
That's my favorite too. I think probably a lot of that is more the nostalgia. I think that's the first Bond movie I really remember seeing, like when it was contemporary and new. I think I was homesick and my mom went to Blockbuster and got it.
Yeah, I know. And like, I remember playing
game.
the N64 video game. Yeah, like, I mean, who didn't, you know, our age have like, you know, split screen multiplayer, you know, game parties in their basement back in the Midwest. Yeah. You know, everybody was playing GoldenEye. It was an amazing game.
At the time, though, right, the GoldenEye was a significant attempt to reboot the Bond franchise again. If you recall, they wanted Pierce Brosnan to play James Bond in the 80s. They couldn't get him because contractually he was locked into the television series he was doing at the time.
I don't even know what series that was.
Remington Steele. They went with
okay, there you go.
Timothy Dalton. Both the films were kind of blah. Mixed with the collapse of the Soviet Union in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, there was some conversations within Hollywood about like, was it even worth continuing with James Bond, or was this just a relic of the past? So,
and I think GoldenEye kind of, it like mirrors that change. Mm-hmm. So we never really go back to like, you know, the Soviet Union and, you know, Russia being the enemy in every single Bond film. Mm-hmm. And even though they do appear as enemies in, you know, Russia, Moscow, all that, he does go to Moscow in GoldenEye. You know, I do think they were able to successfully reboot the franchise. But I mean, wow, once you get into the other 3 films, I mean, they are just pushing it into like, I guess I would call it G.I. Joe territory.
Well, and
like...
Yeah, and one of the things when we look specifically at Die Another Day that the director was talking about, Lee Tamahori, I don't know how to say his name, I apologize, is he said one of the cool things that we can do with Bond films that you can't do with other action franchises like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon is we can really make these things big and extravagant and have kind of the glitz and the glamour of spy action movies that the other franchises don't. So they were definitely leaning into that aspect of James Bond, you know, which we expect James Bond to go to the party, there to be a lot of fancy dress people. There always has to be a villain who is larger than life and kind of, you know, super maniacal and almost, no offense, Elon Musk-ish in their
they're
visions.
Memorable, like, but I mean, a perfect example is Die Another Day. Like the guy at the beginning, they're like working with like stolen blood diamonds or whatever, and like there's an explosion, and then half of his face is diamonds. You know, they just always have, you know, there's Jaws, there's like so many guys that, you know, even I think what was his name, Trevelyan.
Yeah,
is that his name in GoldenEye? I mean, even he gets scarred from an explosion. Like, you know, you look at what's his name, Lost an Eye, in the later ones, and then Javier Bardem had like, you could like take his mouth out. There's always some memorable physical quality about these villains that makes them, you know, instantly recognizable. Which, you know, I think in this one they kind of have that with, you know, the one guy who has the diamonds in his face, and then in No Time to Die, there's what's the actor's name? It's
Rami Malek.
Yeah, Rami Malek. You know, he's scarred, and then he has that kind of white doll face mask or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that makes him a little memorable, I guess. You know, he stands out. But, yeah, I mean, the villains are a big part of Bond, right? It's kind of like Batman. Like, you know, you got to have a cool villain. It's like part of it. It can't just be like a street-level thug. And it's always got to be something in James Bond. It's always got to be something international.
Yeah.
But, okay. So we looked at Pierce Brosnan, how they changed the game. by bringing him on. Now they switch to Daniel Craig. And I mean, Casino Royale really goes back to like spy thriller roots. I think it's all summed up, honestly, in the opening sequence, which is just like an all out action sequence with James Bond in his prime, kicking ass. And it's gritty. It's, you know, it's no longer this like he's driving around with like crazy, you know, contraptions and cars. It's like, no, he's like chasing a bunch of guys and it's all just straight up whatever brute force can get you.
I think part of that is an attempt to kind of return to the Sean Connery-esque kind of more rough around the edges character, right? Like in the Sean Connery Bond movies, he punches a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's what he does. He's the James Bond who's punching people. And that's because the Ian Fleming character is not this refined, polished, suave guy who you get in the Roger Moores and the, you know, and the Pierce Brosnan type film. So I think it was a conscious effort to kind of bring James Bond back to his roots. You know?
And I think it worked, generally speaking. The reboot with Daniel Craig, you know, as risky as it was, like, I remember, I think you and I were like freshmen in college and we heard about the announcement of Daniel Craig as James Bond. And we were kind of like, what are they doing? I mean, even if you want to reboot the style of James Bond, I was like, Pierce Brosnan is your guy. Like, he's James Bond right now. And they're like, nah, we're recasting. We're going with this guy. Everybody was kind of like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. And just like Heath Ledger pulled it off in The Dark Knight, Daniel Craig nailed it. I'm not going to lie. I mean, he really embodied that new, or as you said, old school kind of version of Bond that, you know, had been missing for, you know, better part of 2 decades.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, with No Time to Die, they step in here and they're ending this story. Now, something I wanted to give props to for the Daniel Craig saga of James Bond is the movies, while they each have a unique villain and kind of a unique spy thriller to solve, they are connected in a unique way that, like the other ones, like all the Pierce Brosnans, you might see some recurring characters, like, right, Q's still in it, but there's almost no reference to other movies. There's no reference to this kind of shared world. They're just kind of in the same role.
No, and even in the ones where you have multiple films in a row with James Bond facing Spectre, right? Even the ones where I think in total, like there's 8 or 9 Bond films involving the character of Blofeld.
Yeah.
They're not directly linked where the events of Casino Royale have consequences all the way up until No Time to Die. And I mean, the death of Vesper comes into play in this film in a way which we've never seen, a continuality like we have in this one with earlier Bond films. So
right. So I appreciated that. It does, you know, in a way, it's funny because if you haven't seen all the Daniel Craig Bond movies and you go see No Time to Die, it's almost like you could go back and learn the history of like, who are all these characters in this movie? Like, it's kind of neat in that way. If you started with No Time to Die, you're like, oh man, who was Vesper? You're like, well, you can go back and find out, you know, it's pretty cool. And then they have, you know, Blofeld, and they have a bunch of different references. I think there's like a portrait of M on the wall, you know, Judi Dench's M. And, you know, like they have all these things, these callbacks that you're like, yeah, if you go back, like it's all there. So, you know, even like they talk about Bond kind of going off the grid, you know, at the beginning of the movie, he's kind of disappeared and he's no longer a 00 agent. And, you know, the whole point is, though, that like the reason for that stems from, well, events at the beginning of the movie, but also the trauma that he's been through over the course of the previous 4 films. It's kind of like, you know, I need a break. I'm done with it. So, and I can't necessarily blame him. I mean, he was living on like tropical, not paradise. It wasn't like a mansion, but I mean, damn, that was nice. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Nice. Yeah, wouldn't be the worst thing. So on that note, kind of doing a little, you know, looking back at the characters in their roles over the course of their films, which one do you think did it better? Pierce Brosnan or Daniel Craig?
Oh, wow. That's kind of tough.
Because I can give you my answer.
I mean, I think I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say, I really think it is tough to beat Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. And so I'm going to give it to Brosnan.
I'm going to have to give it to Daniel Craig.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. Well, I think the Daniel Craig films are so much more grounded. I just am a fan of Pierce Brosnan as Bond. Between the two, obviously, I mean, as I've said time and time again, I still think Connery is the best Bond, and I will stand by that till the day I die. I mean, he's the man who gave life to the role and brought it to audiences everywhere. So that's what I think.
No, I mean, as far as just, their performances, I really like the grounded, down to earth story that is presented in the Bond or the Daniel Craig films. Like I said, my favorite one's probably GoldenEye, and I do love Brosnan in the role. He was great, but I don't know. I had a lot of fun kind of going back and enjoying Daniel Craig as James Bond. So I'm going to have to give the nod to him. He also had one more movie, so you get to watch another, two and a half hours of Daniel Craig.
I mean, audience, right here, we have to ask you, because either you agree with me because I'm right, or you're wrong and you agree with Dustin. So really, just let us know who you think is right here, just so I can rub it in Dustin's face. Thanks, appreciate it.
Well, looking at the two films specifically, I mean, Die Another Day versus No Time to Die. So there's a couple different elements at play here.
And a few like really kind of uncanny comparisons and similarities between the two films when I think we start looking at them.
Especially the endings kind of.
Yeah. So first things I kind of want to jump off into is when we look back at Die Another Day from 2002, obviously this was a benchmark film in its own right. This was the 20th Bond film. It was also the 40th anniversary of Bond. And
yeah, I heard that they actually pay homage to a lot of the Bond films throughout Die Another Day.
And actually they say there is a reference to every single Bond film throughout, which I think is cool. And rewatching it again, I was trying to pick off the ones that I could, like when Gustav Graves, he parachutes out of the plane with the United Kingdom flag parachute, much like Bond does in The Spy Who Loved Me. They're trying to cut Jinx in half with a laser like they do with James Bond in Goldfinger, and then there's all these little things like the jetpack from Thunderball and
where it just goes up,
the boot knife from Russia with Love. So there's lots of cool little references and nods to what's been there before. The most famous of which is probably when Q gives Bond his watch and says, "Oh, you've had about 20 of these, right? Like how time flies." Also worth noting is that up until that is the first Bond film that does not have Desmond Llewellyn as Q.
Oh, okay.
Starting with, I believe it was.
And he just retired, or what happened?
He died. His last film was The World Is Not Enough, and then he passed away. He'd been in almost every Bond movie from Goldfinger on. I don't think he was in From Russia with Love and Dr. No. So
is From Russia with Love still considered the best Bond movie?
I guess it depends on who you talk to.
Well, listeners, you let us know. How do you rank your top 3, top 5 Bond films? But we'll leave that for the comments.
Oh, wow, that's going to be great. Yeah, I can't wait to hear. So that alone, like, that's a big shift in Bond culture in its own right?
Yeah.
Also, one of the first Bond films to my knowledge, obviously James Bond has been captured. He gets captured frequently in Bond films, but never to the extent that we see in Die Another Day, where he's actually in the North Korean prison camp and tortured for a year and a half. And
he ends up with like long hair and a beard.
Abandoned by MI6. That's something more akin to kind of the Daniel Craig films, kind of the torture, the going off the leaving the agency behind and doing his own thing, which again happens specifically in No Time to Die. But Die Another Day was one of the first Bond movies to bring that about, which I thought was interesting.
Something that did stand out was, I mean, obviously we talk a lot on this show about effects. And I did want to know, obviously this is 2021, or No Time to Die is getting, the most up-to-date effects. So when we compare the two, I mean, it's not really like a fair comparison, but it
Oh,
is worth noting that Die Another Day's effects have not aged particularly well.
I remember seeing it in the theater, that scene where he like surfs there's the in he when he's in
I mean, the
Iceland, the big
surfing's just bad.
ice.
You can tell that's done on like a blue screen.
It's so terrible. But even that, like, there's the scene where Halle Berry's character Jinx, she dives off this cliff, and it's just blatantly blue screened. Like, there's some parts where it's almost like they're so lazy, they're just like, you know what? It's going to be so much more difficult. Just blue screen it. The audience is not going to care. And I think that is a detriment. And one of the things that the Craig Bonds do really well is there is much more of this almost like Mission Impossible level of attention to the realism of the stunts, which I think is an audience you have to love.
And I think it's going to age better. You know, if that was 2002, so we're 19 years away from Die Another Day, you know, give it 19 years after No Time to Die, I think those effects will hold up much better. And I think even if we're comparing those two movies in another 19 years, Die Another Day will look that much worse. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think I have to give the nod in that sense to No Time to Die. They had a lot of great like car motorcycle chases. They had some helicopter shots in this movie. They did a really good job of, like you said, keeping a lot of the, like, as in terms of fighting, you know, they had really good fight choreography. It never came off as like cheesy.
I mean, I think the sequence at the end of the film where he's trying to get up into the bunker control tower.
Yeah, like the one shot.
I think it's phenomenal in terms of the action, the realism of it. The, you know, it's very visceral and physical, and it doesn't feel like that typical Bond of like Bond walks into a warehouse and 1,000 people shoot at him and he's picking them off. But, you know, this felt like a James Bond who deserved to be there, and he was winning because he was better.
When you say that, though, I do have to admit, after watching both these Bond films, I'm shocked that this guy has not died. Like, well, which is gunfire.
I mean,
because he just gets shot at relentlessly and like never. He got hit a couple times, but like other than like a slight limp, like he wasn't going out on it.
Yeah, well,
you know,
Bond, man.
Yeah, I mean, so it was like that was one of the things that stood out to me. Watching both of them again is kind of that, you know, there's like a running gag in Star Wars where like stormtroopers can't hit anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, that's kind of how it feels here. Like James Bond just has, there's like armies around him. There's like, you know, entire tactical teams with fully automatic weapons, and they just cannot seem to hit this guy.
Yeah.
But, and then, you know, conversely, he often is able, like you said, to somehow pick them off. Although I did like that one shot in No Time to Die when he's going up like the stairwell, because that one felt like, you know, from a POV, you know, we're kind of over the shoulder of what Daniel Craig is doing. It did feel like, you know, he was able to get off quicker.
Yeah.
Like
he was just better than everybmery.
Right. Yeah. That one felt that way. But there are some scenarios where I'm like, guys, I just can't imagine you would ever get out of this.
No. I mean, in No Time to Die, there's that car chase in Spain with the original Aston Martin from
that was dope.
Gold Finger, which is amazing.
Oh, that was so dope though. Like, so he's like, it's awesome because the chase sequence starts off with him just driving. You know, they're doing stunt driving. He's outmaneuvering these guys. He's crashing them. And then all of a sudden he like opens up this little thing inside the car, this little like control panel. And all of a sudden it's the James Bond car that everyone knew, right? It's got machine guns in the headlights. It's completely bulletproof. He's doing smoke. He's like sending wires out. I mean, it was incredible. Yeah. I was like, it made me smile. I was like, yes, there he is. James Bond in the flesh right there. And of course, like you said, that's the famous car. So that was an incredible sequence. Now, with No Time to Die, something that stands out to me is the opening sequence, which actually plays a little bit like a horror movie. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, for one, it is the longest opening pre-title James Bond sequence of all the films. So it was long.
Yeah. I mean, so like, obviously there's a couple different elements to the pre like title sequence or whatever. But the main one being like where the guy shows up at the girl's house. I mean, that was really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was shocked. I mean, it was playing to me like almost like a slasher film.
Yeah.
In a way. It had those type of vibes. And it was really good. I mean, the tension was high.
Well, what's weird about it is a lot of the earlier, really even kind of the pre-Brosnan Bond films, right? Those kind of cold openings are sort of just action sequences to show off how cool Bond is, right?
Well, and they still have it. It's just the next sequence.
But this one was so integral to the story. And as you said, it took a different style and a different feel. And it was not like anything we'd seen in a Bond movie before.
I really enjoyed it. I had to say, when it kicked off, I was surprised. I was like, this is not at all what I thought. I mean, I was picturing the scene when he's with the girl, what's her name? Madeline or
mm-hmm.
Yeah, Madeline something like that.
Swan.
Madeline Swan. He's with her and they're like in love. And then, he goes to Vesper's grave, bam, explosion. He rushes back down. Now we're in like classic James Bond opening sequence. I'm like, this is what I expected. But that original where the villain shows up at the girl's house, I was like, man, that was intense. And
and then when we go into the following title sequences, when we look back at Die Another Day, something that Die Another Day does very interesting is that's the only Bond film I can think of where the title sequence is directly a portion of the story.
Because they like cut into his torture.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It is
because most of them are these abstract. I mean, I'm sure there's a company out there that is just living their best life, creating like, oh man, have the bullets like hit each other.
Yeah. like these cool like elements of that film in this opening sequence. That one is
it's literally like it sounds like the opening sequences sound like, if a student in like film school was like pitching like a cool idea, they're like, oh yeah, and then you pull back and it's in like a sand dial and like
yeah
and then you pull back further and it's like the whole world and you're like that's like the opening sequences to Bond. Like someone gets to like be as creative as they can. Pretty wild. So I wanted to say I don't know if you noticed this, but in No Time to Die, when he does like the whole down the barrel fires the gun, there was no blood. Is there normally?
There's most of the time blood. I mean,
it like drops down like someone got shot, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, maybe they just switched it up, but I was like, all right. So and both, we have to give an acknowledgement to both films. I think they both kind of hit all the major James Bond catchphrases, shaken not stirred, Bond, James Bond, License to Kill, I think was said in both. Mm-hmm. There's, in No Time to Die, great attempt. Well, actually in both of them, really, because like you said, the story in Die Another Day does call for him to be kind of excommunicated from MI6 or whatever. So he, there's great emphasis on his 007 call sign or whatever. Mm-hmm. And all that. So they have all those things in both the movies. They usually find a way to get them all in.
Yeah.
I mean,
another similarity is I do think it's weird that both of these Bond films involve James Bond going to Cuba.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That's where he meets Jinx, right?
Yeah.
Havana.
It's not like every Bond movie he's in Cuba, but it happens to be that out of the 5 that he is, 2 of them are the films we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. So which title sequence do you think did it better? I mean, we got Madonna. And then who did the title sequence in the new one? I'm not 100% sure the artist.
Billie Eilish.
Okay, Billie Eilish.
Opening song. I really actually like the Die Another Day opening sequence because, as I said, we've never seen that before, and we haven't really seen it since then. Part of the story. I mean,
yeah, I think that one, and they're all actually pretty good. You go back and look at a lot of them; they're all interesting enough that you can't look away.
I do think it's funny, though, that with that one, apparently that's one of the most disputed James Bond theme songs. I guess it was nominated for a Golden Globe and a Grammy.
Yeah, but it was also nominated for like a Golden Raspberry.
As the worst song. So I guess it's really divisive, which I think is funny.
I don't know. I actually liked the Die Another Day one. I heard that it played really well to youth because it kind of has that almost like a club vibe a little bit. Like
Mhm.
you could see that being on a DJ's playlist, where the Billie Eilish one I think plays more to the somberness of like, hey, we're gonna see some death here.
Yeah, right.
No time to die. You're like, oh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
But even that acknowledgement, right? Die Another Day, No Time to Die. I mean, there's even this subtle hint that, like, the titles themselves both kind of mean the same thing, really. Is like, not yet.
So,
And then No Time to Die is like, psych.
um, last thing I want to talk about, at some point, we're going to get into characters here, or back into story more. But I do think that this is relevant. Both of these films were altered by real world events, just in the sense that with No Time to Die, the film was originally supposed to be released pre-pandemic, and it is a film about James Bond preventing a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I did
Albeit
not
from nanobots.
in nanobots, not coronavirus. However, in Die Another Day, which I did not know, it was originally written and production began with the Icarus project. Instead of them using it along the 38th parallel, they were actually supposed to attack New York with Icarus.
Ooh. So I'm assuming 2002, after
9/11, they're like, that's not going to work. We got to change that a bit.
We are going, where'd they go? Iceland?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, they're like, we're going somewhere else.
So I just thought that was kind of interesting that both of these final Bond films were both sort of cursed by current events.
Interesting. Yeah, I did notice that parallel with the pandemic. I was like, I mean, what is the chance that like the villain's plan would be to like infect a lot of people and have them infect other people? And like, I was like, sounds a lot like what we're dealing with today.
Yeah, right.
So kind of funny. But yeah, when we dive into the stories, like I said at the top, I think one of my favorite things about No Time to Die is how it draws inspiration in characters and stories from the previous set of Daniel Craig Bond films. I really enjoyed that element of it. It makes all the other ones feel like, must viewing if you want to understand why all this is happening. Die Another Day, I felt, was much more, it was in that kind of standalone vein. And ironically, I thought both of them, when they got to their villains, they were both outlandish. I didn't really care for either of the villains in these, if I'm being honest.
Well, I think that, and we've talked about this outside the show, some of the best Bond villains are directly related to Bond, right?
Yeah, Vesper, Trevelyan, and Goldeneye.
Right. And they're playing off of who Bond is and taking advantage of their history with him. And
well, because it makes it feel more like integral that it needs to be James Bond and not just another 00 agent. Because sometimes they kind of have like this vibe of like, I mean, hey, here's the case file. This one's for 007. This one's for 006. This is just the case you're going on. And you're like, okay, there's not really a whole tie to the character, but the most powerful Bond stories are like Trevelyan was his partner and one of his best friends. Vesper is, ironically, one of the first times Bond, truly, truly fell in love. And then both times he was betrayed. It's got to suck to be James Bond. You can never trust anyone. I mean, they deal with that in No Time to Die, but I'd be you can never trust anybody. But I was much more story-wise with No Time to Die. I was much more invested in the girl. Like, I really wanted to know
the little girl or Swan.
I liked her story, her place in the story. I thought it was really well done because she was an intriguing character. She got the opening sequence, and there was this sense that she had possibly betrayed James Bond, but didn't really. It was interesting, but I don't know. I just wanted Bond to be happy again. And like they like at the beginning of the movie, they like hint that like he could be happy again. And then you're like, oh, this freaking asshole betrayed him again. You know, and then of course she comes back in the story, and you're like, oh man. But I don't know. That was my favorite element. I wasn't really into the villain. I wasn't really feeling it.
I have to agree on both accounts. I think that because the way that they introduced Swan and her background in Spectre, there is a lot of questions that aren't answered for an audience. So it's cool that we get to continue with who she is and her relationship with Bond. I agree. I think as far as almost all the Daniel Craig villains, I feel like this was the weakest one. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something about him, like the whole plan about, I was like, I don't know why you would want to do. I mean, maybe you're, the Joker and you just want to like fuck shit up. But generally speaking, I was like, I'm not really sure why you're doing all this. Just keep your garden to yourself, bro. Like you could live here in like I don't know. I wasn't feeling it. And same thing, you go to Die Another Day and there's kind of this whole like villain faking his own death and like he's trying to come back and I don't know, it's somewhat kind of like, I don't want to say win the love of his father, but like he's trying to like reclaim his spot and all this stuff. I was like, it's all right. So if I had to go, which one did I like more? I'm going to give the nod to No Time to Die. And the reasoning is because I think the number one thing they wanted to convey to me as the viewer was...
Whoa. Before we get there, I do think there's something very serious that we need to have a conversation about that we have not mentioned.
All right.
We told people that there were going to be spoilers. Let's talk about the damn spoilers.
Okay. So in Die Another Day, James Bond wins. So if you're curious, he
dies. They kill James Bond.
In No Time to Die, he dies. Finally, if after all these Bond movies, he's gone. How many Bond movies have there been? 25?
Yep.
He's dead. So
well, technically 25 official. Then there's the non-Eon. Those two James Bond movies. So, but yeah, for 25 films, he is now dead.
Yeah, they've officially killed James Bond. And I have to say, love the way they did it.
All right, break it down.
All right.
What did you love about
it? The whole thing, and this is what I was going to say about the story, is the movie No Time to Die is asking the question of, can James Bond ever find happiness or peace? Can he ever be at peace? And the answer, I think, is yes, he probably could. But the way the movie plays out, Swan and him end up having like they go off and they have their romantic thing away, and then he gets attacked. Well, the way the story plays out is that while they were doing that, she got pregnant and ended up having James Bond's son or daughter. Sorry.
She's a daughter, man.
Yeah. Had a daughter. And her name was, what was her name?
I had no idea.
Margaret or something. I don't know.
James Bond's daughter. That's for all intents and purposes, it is what her name is.
Right. So the point is that the way the story plays out, this nanobot virus infects people based on their DNA. And so if you have this virus, if the nanobots have infected you and infected you with the appropriate DNA for whoever you want to send the virus after, if you come in contact with them, they will die. And it's pretty gruesome death. So by the end of the film, we realize that James Bond is indeed infected, but with the DNA of Swan and his daughter. So he will never, ever be able to be with them again, according to the movie. There's just no way you could ever remove the virus from a human body. So he would never enjoy happiness. But when I say he could have found peace, I think with his daughter, he would have, officially retired. Now, that doesn't mean James Bond doesn't have energies and we couldn't get another movie out of it. But I mean, he could go away somewhere and, mostly live in peace until someone gets him. Mm-hmm. But the point is, the movie says, no, that's not going to happen because, well, You can't physically be in contact with them or be around them at all. So you're screwed. Well, he ends up, realizing that also if he lives, then that can always be used against him, right? If his enemies ever wanted to hurt him personally, unlike before where I said, hey, they might try to kill him, whatever. Now they're just like, hey, we're going to get your wife and your daughter in the same room as you. It's over. They're dead. So he ends up, they fire missiles, and that's it. He stands, in a rain of fire glory, and James Bond is gone, saves the day, saves his, lover and his daughter. And I think he was at peace with it. And I think in the end, he truly found a reason to die. And I liked it.
Wow. So if you haven't seen the film and you're still listening to us, you don't need to go see it because Dustin gives such a great play-by-play of that film. Almost rivals, the cinematic experience in its own right.
Yeah,
okay.
Jesus.
So you liked it. You thought, is it because you thought it worked in this story, or is part of it just the fact that you thought that we needed to take a character who has not been ever brought to this point here?
Yeah, I like that element of it. It makes it a unique James Bond viewing experience, but really, I think that's the crux of the movie. The villain just seems to, play that kind of like evil, maniacal guy who has a master plan to take over the world or destroy the world or whatever. I think the crux of the movie is, can James Bond ever find happiness and peace? And with the ending, I think they deliver, but it's like, the answers are yes, no, and then option C, which is what we got. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it. I thought that was great. And yeah, that to me was worthwhile. Am I sad that James Bond's gone? Sure. Did I cry? No. I might have shed a tear when Tony Stark went. So,
it is interesting, right? And we've always kind of talked about this. One of the potential flaws in the James Bond film series is the fact that we know that James Bond is not going to die, right? We say it all the time. James Bond's going to find a way out of it, and he always does. So I do think that it was bold that they decided to go there, because up until the very second, you're like, he's got a way out. He's got a way. No, he's actually going to self-sacrifice here. And I think that was very powerful. And I think it was a nice bookend to the Daniel Craig James Bond chapter. Now,
I really wanted him to get off that island and spend his rest of the life with the lover and the daughter.
Well, if you recall, during the Connery films, he did get married. I believe his wife died in the George Lazenby on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So we have seen the character go there before. We have not seen him. The introduction of his child was something we haven't seen before. And the quote unquote death was something we haven't seen before. But remember, and I will remind you all, if you stayed till the very end of the credits, as I have, like every other James Bond film before it, it does say James Bond will return. So I don't know. Is this simply that we're getting another Bond movie, or we are getting a continuation of the Bond storyline? I don't know. And for all intents and purposes, they may not know either, because apparently they have no idea who the heck the next James Bond's going to be.
Well, it's interesting, and we'll talk about this after we get to the end of the film, or the end of our discussion. But so story-wise, then, who do you think did it better? And clearly, I think No Time to Die did. I actually enjoyed the story. I really wanted them to be together. I wanted James Bond to be happy. He's always so sad.
Only having seen No Time to Die once, because I just saw it the other day. Whereas Die Another Day, unfortunately, I've seen a million times. I tend to agree. I think that the No Time to Die is the better story. It pushes Bond. It pushes the Bond franchise in a new direction. At the time, I thought No Time to Die Die Another Day did some bold and innovative things that we hadn't seen before at that time, for a Bond film.
Yeah, looking at them, there's just certain elements, the surfing, the Ice Palace, certain elements of Die Another Day, I just don't think have aged well. And that doesn't have to do with the story. To me, they just stood out. Like, I don't know. It's like watching that scene at the beginning of Temple of Doom, like when they're in that raft and they're like going down a river. And I'm like, they would be dead. I mean, it reminds me of that where I'm like, why is James Bond surfing? Like in a spy suit. I just can't
Well, I will tell you this.
On CG, on a blue screen.
I mean, yeah. I mean, hey, unfortunately, a lot of the Pierce Brosnan films suffer from that same thing, which is in an attempt to go so big, they kind of, they sort of blow up our expectations and we're like, really?
It just has kind of a cartoonish effect. Like I said, it reminds me like G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra. Like,
well, I mean, it's exactly why they were able to create 3 Austin Powers movies, poking fun at, the how big they really go and how outlandish these plots can become at times.
Yeah. So I don't know.
So I'm with you. I think that the newer version, being grounded in realism, is a better story in its own right.
You want to know a fun fact though? When they go to that ice palace and he comes back on his car, apparently they stopped a dam and they really froze that lake over.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought that was badass. I was like, hey, I mean, of all the things you could do that are badass, that's pretty badass.
That's pretty cool. So another fun fact, actually for Die Another Day, before they decided on Lee Tamamori, they actually threw around, they considered and met with the directors, Tony Scott.
Wow.
Quentin Tarantino, and this last one blows my mind, Martin Scorsese.
No way.
Yeah, right? Like, can you imagine if Martin Scorsese made a Bond film? That would have been insane.
I mean, I'm almost shocked that he was actually interested in it. But I mean, I guess you kind of have to be open to everything. Like, hey, I mean, what are you guys thinking? Mm-hmm. It didn't work out, clearly. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's how it goes. But yeah, story-wise, I'd have to give the nod there. Like I said, stunts and effects, I'm much more preferential to the grounded, realism, brute force style. Although there's something to be said about being outlandish, right? It is James Bond.
So something else I want to ask you about. This was obviously one of the big, quote unquote, controversial aspects of the film before it came out, right? The idea that many audience goers were led to believe that there was going to be a woman 007, which there was.
Yes. No, there was. Yeah, she took over the moniker.
I was kind of surprised, first of all, that there was such a backlash, because I was like, I mean, it's literally just their number that they're assigned.
Yeah.
And clearly, as I think that Daniel Craig James Bond has like left the MI6 like in 3 of his 5 movies. So I was like, why is this such a shock that, in this film, he might not be an MI6 agent? It's happened before.
Well, I mean, I guess this was the conversation I was alluding to before, is it felt like the filmmakers and probably the producers are going to gauge the reaction to the film and determine whether they want to move forward. Because there's a scene at the end where they set a glass of scotch down or whatever, and they do a toast to James Bond having passed. And there's a sense that could be the central cast for another 007 adventure, right? And I don't see why not. I actually was a little surprised they didn't get bold enough and let the villain live, so that they would have a secondary story to kick off this new, like, hey, these agents are off to find this villain to avenge James Bond's death. I got the impression that the filmmakers either wanted to bookend Daniel Craig and just leave it, or they were maybe not bold enough or confident enough in the idea that the story would have to continue. Because what if people didn't like it?
That's interesting, because, right, again, when we look at Die Another Day, Eon originally planned to use that as a springboard for a series set in the James Bond universe of films with
Jinx,
Halle
right?
Berry.
Yeah. And I remember they said after it was like the bombing of like one of the Tomb Raider movies, and I think it was like Catwoman, ironically was Halle Berry, and I think Elektra or something like that. They ended up deciding against at that time doing a, you know, female-led action franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I think the character of Jinx was really well received, and
Mm-hmm.
it was nice that she wasn't a you know, a double cross or anything like that. They actually make it a different girl, because you
Mm-hmm.
know, all the James Bonds, they all have these like femme fatales. You can never trust them.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why I really loved Swan in No Time to Die, because I think she really loved James Bond.
And we were set up to think that she was, and guess what? They broke the norm, and she wasn't. She was someone who
Yeah.
actually cared about Bond and loved him. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted them to find happiness. But anyway, yeah, I get the impression that, you know, there's this idea formulating somewhere that if No Time to Die does really well and there's a great reception to the cast that's left, that they would dare to continue 007 with someone other than James Bond. And I'm assuming it would be the girl in the movie, which I can't, her name is eluding me at the moment. I just knew her as 007. But I'm assuming she would take up the mantle, which that'd be cool. I mean, as long as the story's good, we got the spy thriller element. I mean, it would definitely be interesting. I was surprised. I thought if they were going to do that, yeah, they would leave almost like a hanging cliffhanger, something that they could use to springboard that next film. And I felt like they didn't do that. And like I said, I don't know whether that's because they wanted to give Daniel Craig that kind of like full bookend, like your story's over. And if we do move on with this cast, that'll be their story.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they were maybe, you know, not bold enough to do it. They didn't have enough belief in, you know, a 007 film without James Bond, you know, and to their hesitancy, you know, a great example of that is the Bourne series, right? They've done Bourne movies without Jason Bourne, and they did not do so hot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, not that James Bond typically has this driving central mystery, but you know, the Bourne series, one of the reasons why it was such, you know, it had such hooks was because everyone wanted to know what his backstory was. You know, it was very driven around his identity.
Yeah. You know, I was actually thinking kind of more what Disney was originally thinking with the Indiana Jones franchise, right?
Yeah.
They were setting themselves up to have a new person take up the mantle and follow in Indiana Jones' footsteps. And audiences did not seem like they would be on board with that.
I know. I think
probably why they dropped it.
Yeah, I'm assuming the initial reaction to that, which was online, and oh my God, you cannot listen to the internet. You know, they said Daniel Craig would suck. They said Heath Ledger would suck. You know, they've said a lot of people that would suck would, and they did, but they basically say everyone's going to suck. And I don't know, you can't listen to that. Like if you have a vision, if you have something you want to do, I think you have to be bold enough to make that move. And I got the vibe that they're like, let's see how people react to the film. Did they like it? You know, if we you know, how does it do at the box office? Does this still have staying power? And yeah, to that end, I don't know, they just didn't go all the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if what you're asking is, are they just going to cast another James Bond and kick off a new iteration of the franchise? It's possible. They did not make it clear to me that that's not what will happen.
Fair enough. Okay. So, I know. Hey, while we're on that topic, if you know, the Broccolis called you up and they said, "Hey, who do you think we should cast as James Bond?"
Tom Cruise.
Don't think that's going to happen. Anyone else that you think might make a great James Bond there, D-Man?
You know, I always thought Idris Elba would be cool. He's been floated around as a guy that could be Bond. And he has that super suave. He seems incredibly confident. I think he looks great in a tux. So I could see it. Okay. I could see. Who else? Chris Pratt. No, I'm just kidding. You know, stay with Jurassic World, man. Stay with Guardians. But who else could be James Bond? It's pretty tough. I'm not sure. I don't know. What would you throw out there?
My preference has always been Tom Hiddleston, just because
that's there's something about kind of going back to a like looks Brosnan style,
very kind of Connery in his some of the films he's done, you could see him kind of pulling off the action star role. I mostly think of like Kong Skull Island. Like you're like, okay,
Well,
this
and
guy
the
can
other thing too
save the
is
day.
he's fortunate that like his performance as Loki has him dressed extravagantly and like long hair and all this stuff. So, audiences don't necessarily, they're not going to see Loki, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So he can shed that and take on this new persona. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be down for that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously there could be the handoff to a 007 that isn't James Bond, but I would think if they're going to do that, they already set that up here. I would just continue with that. I mean, I think she'd be great in the role. It's hard to tell from like, a leading perspective if you can carry the whole film, but ultimately her performance was, really good. I think that would just come down to writing. Can they make that character more interesting? Because here she was much more like, a side character at MI6 and didn't really have, a whole story of her own. It was kind of jawing back and forth, her and Bond over the same mission and the 007 moniker. But she would need that kind of internal struggle that James Bond carries with him. And to that, I would be interested.
Also wanted to ask you, what was your thoughts on the decision to kill off Felix Leiter?
It was touching. Obviously, they did it intentionally, I think, because they wanted him to have a sense of loss early on in the film. And I definitely liked that they had that scene together as the oil rig was flooding. So I thought that scene was done well, and they definitely took the second. I mean, this movie's long, so they had a lot of seconds, but they did take the, little bit of time to make sure that, he didn't just go down the stairs and he's gone and then Bond escapes.
Yeah.
They kind of gave them some time together. So, I mean, obviously I don't want to see anybody die. So
I thought it was weird though, because the double agent, right, that they're dealing with at that point.
Yeah.
Who sets them up. I was kind of surprised because I was like, this is like the worst casting ever.
Well, they were going for this kind of gag. They had the guy like smiling. He's like too happy. And even after he revealed his his double cross, he's still smiling. He's like, hey.
Yeah, it's just the smiling guy. I'm like, as we said, we've seen Bond movies where people have diamond faces and metal teeth, and
they went with the smiling.
Go with the smiling guy. That's the thing.
That's the thing.
So
yeah, I mean, when you compare the endings, I mean, again, I think No Time to Die is more powerful because obviously, like you said, it breaks James Bond traditions and kind of pushes the series to new directions. It definitely on this show had us asking questions about where does this go next, and clearly we have interest in what they're going to do. So they've definitely done their job. With Die Another Day, it kind of ends in typical Bond fashion. Him and the girl, mission's done. Bond gets to relax, and James Bond will be back.
Yep.
Which he wasn't, but in a different actor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what's next, but yeah, if I had to boil it down, which one did I like more? Which one do I think did it better? I'm going to go No Time to Die. For most, I outlined the reasons. They don't need to be repeated.
I am probably going to go with Die Another Day. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go with No Time to Die as well. I think that not only is Die Another Day is a fun movie, they do some different things. If you're a Bond fan, there's some cool respect paid to the history of the franchise. Definitely. But I have always said I think it's one of the weakest Bond films. Another interesting thing between both films is it is kind of weird watching them as an audience. You really do see how old Pierce Brosnan is and how old Daniel Craig is. So
yes,
it does feel like we need new, young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and I'm in the theater and I was like, damn, Daniel Craig looks old. Like at some point, like he's just not going to be able to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
you know,
they just seem old, and you're like, okay, I get it. We got to go on to a new Bond.
Yep. So, all right. Well, that does it for the episode. We throw it over to our listeners, viewers. Let us know, which Bond do you think did it better, and which movie do you think did it better? It's Pierce Brosnan versus Daniel Craig, and Die Another Day versus No Time to Die. So you guys let us know who you think did it better, and continue the conversations on social media, as well as leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. And you can subscribe to this show there on Google Play Music. You can find us on Spotify, most major podcast directories, as well as YouTube, where the show is posted in video form. So be sure to check us out, subscribe, comment, and let us know your thoughts on the James Bond franchise and where we're going next. So throw it over to you, CP.
Hey, we love talking James Bond. We hope you love talking James Bond. Next week, we're getting back to October movies, and we are going to be comparing two, I don't know if we're going to call them horror classics, but they've been around a bit. The Child's Play films with everyone's favorite doll, Chucky. So back to the Halloween centric, but we couldn't miss the opportunity to talk about this with a Bond movie that we've been waiting to for close to 2 years to finally,
exactly.
It was coming out, so we had to talk about it. We hope that you will join us next week as we continue the conversation and ask who did it better. Until then, keep watching movies, and we'll see you next week.